Welcome to Colonie TV, the governmental educational channel for the town of Colonie.
Hi, I'm Jamie. I'm a grateful recovering addict, and this is my story on Inside Addiction.
Jamie, tell me how it was growing up in your household, how the early years were.
Well, I was an only child, but I grew up next to friends of the family, so there were a lot of kids on the block. And I had two very loving parents, both worked full-time. My mother worked for the government, and my father is a social worker. So, as I found out later on, I felt different as a kid. I felt like there was something not right with me, that I was not normal, that I didn't. I guess looking back now, I could say like I felt like I didn't quite fit in anywhere. But my parents, they worked hard and they loved me. I found out later again that there's a difference between, being told you're loved and feeling loved. And it's not that I wasn't loved, it's just that I didn't feel like I was loved. So, but from the outside looking in, it was a very happy, normal, middle class childhood.
How were your grades in school? Were you into any sports, any extracurricular activities?
Well, this is what happened. In second grade, there was a test that determined whether or not you got into this advanced program. And as I said, I grew up with a bunch of people, like, kids my age around the block, and it was in the summer, everybody got a piece of paper saying whether or not they were accepted into the advanced program. And everyone on the block got accepted but me. And prior to that, now this was like, as I said, like second, third grade, I already felt like I was stupid. Nobody told me that. That's just what I felt. Like, I compared myself a lot, even as a young kid. And when I got that test, it really, for me, confirmed my belief that I was stupid, that it didn't matter what anybody told me. It didn't matter if I did well in another course. It's what I felt, and that test confirmed my belief. And I took that test and I made it my reality. I made it that, I really felt like I was stupid. I had gone to private school earlier on for kindergarten and first. For second and third, I went to a public school. And for fourth, fifth, and sixth, I went to a private school. So I was kind of like shifted around a lot, which I think kind of maybe it attributed to the fact where I felt like I didn't fit in, because I wasn't really anywhere long enough to feel like I did fit in. But again, comparing myself, it didn't matter what anybody said. If I compared myself to someone, I was always less than. So I didn't really have time to, I guess, because I wasn't, in one school long enough to really be active in sports until later on. Like in high school, I got involved in cheerleading. I did do soccer in 7th and 8th grade, and I loved that, and I excelled at that. But again, 7th and 8th grade, I shifted to another private all-girls school. And did well. And then again in high school, I did cheerleading. So I moved around a lot as a kid.
So tell me about the first time that you used. How old were you? What were the circumstances surrounding it? Tell me about the first time you used.
I'll never forget the first time I used. We were at a party. I was at high school. I had just started high school, and we went to a party, and there was a keg party. So I remember taking a sip of the beer and feeling like, wow, okay, I feel okay. I finally felt like I belonged in my own skin. I felt like I could be different things. I felt like I could talk to people better. I felt smarter. I felt prettier. I felt happier. I felt, it definitely felt like I belonged when I took a sip of beer. And, you know, I didn't per se get bombed that night. I know I definitely, you know, I was intoxicated, and early, because it was so early on, I could, you know, I didn't drink again until the next party, you know?
So as time goes on and you know you're not drinking consistently, when parties come up, you'll go, you'll drink. At what point did you notice, looking back now, that your drinking kind of progressed and increased?
Well, you know, looking back now, throughout my years of high school, there was not an event that happened in high school where my friends and I didn't drink before. We drank before dances, we drank when we went to the drive-ins, we drank when we went to the airport. The difference then, I mean, I could stop, but I know it took me, like looking back now and knowing what I know now, I would say it was probably alcohol abuse, you know, by 17 years old. By the time I got to college, my first year of college, I would say by DSM standards, I would be alcohol dependent, without a question. I could drink. By the time I got to my first year of college, I could drink easy a case of beer. I won an award for my first year of college. Not proud of this now, but I won the award for the girl that could drink the most.
Not exactly the dean's list.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. It was not the dean's list at all. And you know, needless to say, I didn't do too well in school my first year of college. It was not a priority. You know, and slowly, I would say that that's where, you know, the morals and values that were instilled in me kind of began to slip away, because I was instilled with morals and values. But by 18, in my first year of college, the drinking started to become a priority for me. And I would say I was losing, you know, what was instilled in me.
How so?
Well, I remember one specific party that we had, and my grandparents were coming up, and my grandparents meant a real lot to me. And they were coming up, it was for my birthday. And the night before, we all went out and we just drank and drank and drank. And I was so hungover, I couldn't even get up. And the apartment was trashed, and it broke my father's heart. And he came, and I was really close with my father, you know. And when he came, he looked at the place and left in tears, along with my grandparents. And it broke my heart, but the guilt and the shame that accompanied that, when I drank, it dissipated. And it then, you know, thus began the vicious cycle of alcoholism for me, because I felt like I was no good unless I drank. I drank, I did things that were no good. And then it reinstilled the fact that, like, I'm no good. And the more, you know, as my alcoholism progressed, the more my parents would say, you know, we love you, I would feel like, why? You know, why do you love me? I'm doing all these horrible things. I had parties at their house when I was in high school, you know, disrespected them, broke their trust, took the car out, was driving at 14 years old. We were, you know, like I said, I was a cheerleader in high school, and we, right before one of the dances, we shut down the dance because one of the girls that I went to high school with, that we came to the dance with, had taken a Benadryl before she drank, and when she got there, she started convulsing. So they shut the dance down. So we got in trouble for that. You know, the police came. So there were signs, and my mother knew something was going on with me, but denial really played a big part in our family. And my father didn't really want to, I don't think he wanted to believe it. And I was a real good liar and a real good manipulator, you know?
What are some of the other things, looking back now, that you can see easily were like neon signs, like, whoa, Jamie, you might have a problem if, like, that's included in the progression of your use beyond college and in.
Oh, later on. Well, I mean, as my addiction, I mean, it's chronic, progressive, and fatal. And for me, it was very chronic, and my addiction went into other things. I had my first blackout when I was at Buffalo State College for a semester, and that was really scary, you know, but it wasn't enough to stop me. It wasn't enough to say, all right, you know, I knew then, I said, you know, I probably have you know, this is not normal, you know, because I knew eventually, you know, I have to say, when I came back home, I was bartending, right? And so I would bartend, and even if I went out to the bar, other people would go home. And like, I was like one of the last people there. Other people could stop. I couldn't stop. And I knew, I used to drink when I was bartending. I would drink and I'd be like, yep, I'm an alcoholic, and laugh about it and think it was funny, you know. And my addiction progressed. I moved to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, when I was 26. I had won a football square, and I was bartending, and I moved to South Carolina and got into doing coke. And then it did not take long. See, because then for me it was like, wow, that became my drug of choice. It was, you know, I was consumed by where can I get it, how much can I get, how often can I get it. I would sleep all day and bartend all night. And in that, you know, in bartending, I made enough money to survive, and I didn't need to, you know, I didn't need to do anything. You know, I didn't do anything besides bartend, work, drink, and do drugs. And that was my life. And I knew, my parents knew that there was something going on with me, but they didn't quite know because I was so far away at the time, and I really, you know, like I said, I hid it well. And when I was in Myrtle Beach, I was raped at knife point by a stranger. And that's when I really hit my bottom, because I was looking for drugs that night, and I pulled into a gas station, and there was a man standing there, and I asked him for directions on how to get to this apartment, because I knew there were drugs there. And he got in the car, and I was raped at knife point by a stranger. And I called my parents at 6 a.m. the next morning, and they came to get me. And prior to that, right before that, I had a friend in Myrtle Beach that was really concerned for me, because she said, you know, you're losing so much weight. You're like 80 pounds, 85 pounds. And she was really concerned for me, but I was really caught in the grips of my addiction at that point, that I didn't want to see it, because my drug of choice had switched. You know, I tried, you know, the geographical change, the switching substances, and at that point, then that trauma happened, and I wound up coming back home.
So you're in Myrtle Beach, and you get raped.
Mm-hmm.
Is that when you knew that you needed help? I knew I needed help when?
The point when I knew I needed help was after coming home. I got involved with a man who became very abusive. I got into other substances. He became very, very abusive, and I had tried to commit suicide. I overdosed on pills. The first time I overdosed on pills, I would say that at that point, I said, I really need help. Something's not right. However, I wouldn't say I was bouncing, you know, with joy and, you know, like, I really need some help. I'm going to go get it, you know. It was more, I need help. I don't know what to do. And I was, you know, at the end of my road. I was hopeless. I had tried, you know, like I said, a number of different things. It wasn't working. And my parents at that point were really disgusted with me. And at the time of the second that I had taken the pills the second time, police came to the door and said, you're going to come with us. And I said, why? I couldn't even fathom why they would want to come to me. And they said, did you try to hurt yourself? And I said, no. And they were like, well, did you take pills? And I said, yeah. They said, well, that's trying to hurt yourself. I had no idea that it was not against the law to do that. I was so wrapped up in my self-centeredness and my addiction that I didn't think there was a problem with that. And they admitted me into a psych ward because I had done that against my will, and they wouldn't let me go until I signed myself into a rehab. So although I knew I needed help prior to taking the pills because I knew I had a problem, but I didn't know any other way out. It wasn't that really that I wanted to die, I just wanted the pain to stop. I wanted to stop hurting so much, and I didn't know any other way.
So you go to treatment
Mm-hmm.
and you get sober.
Well, the first time I went to treatment, I left AMA against medical advice because, you know, I have to say, I was in the psychiatric ward for a while because they wouldn't let me go until I went to rehab, and I was feeling safe in that psychiatric center. I felt like I was safe, you know. I was like confined. I couldn't get any drugs, and if I could, they were legal. They were prescribing me legal drugs. So I would, you know, often go to the nurse and say, you know, I'm feeling really anxious right now, you know, and finally she was like caught on to me, and she was like, okay, you know, I think you should try breathing, you know. And when they released me, I actually, in fact, I still have this list to this day. I wrote a list of pros and cons for rehab. And some of the pros were better drugs in rehab, and some of them were better drugs out of rehab. So, you know, when I went to rehab, there was a fist fight the night that I got there, and I was like, this is it. This is crazier than the psychiatric house. And I tried to convince the nurse there that I had 2 cats at home that I needed to take care of. I didn't belong there. And, you know, I was pretty angry. And I was still with the abusive man, and he was using. And he was actually, at this point, incarcerated. He was in for 5 and out for 2. So he left me enough money underneath the computer, so if I wanted to come home from rehab, it would be there. And not only enough money for that, but enough money, of course, to get drugs. So I left rehab, came home, got drugs, and went back to him. And when I went back to him, I had heard something in rehab, and I started kind of hearing about these, you know, some meetings. So I was going to some meetings and hearing a message of hope. And I was really kind of teetering back and forth. For me, you know, my point that you asked me, it was more, I had to come to a point where I wanted to live just a little bit more than I wanted to die. It was like that 51% of the time that I wanted to live. I had to want to live just that much more than I wanted to die. And it came to a point where the guy that I was with, the abusive man, who is today my daughter's father, sperm donor, but he almost killed me. I was almost dead. And that was the point where I wanted to live more than I wanted to die. And I surrendered, and I went back to rehab, completed successfully, came back out, and I didn't stay sober right away. I didn't stay clean right away. It took me a little while. I went to meetings and went to meetings using, but no one ever kicked me out. And it was a time that when I went to meetings, I felt that feeling again where I was okay. You know, like I was not as damaged as I thought I was, and I felt supported, and I just kept going back until I could learn to love myself a little bit, and that's a job, you know.
So tell me how it's been since you've gotten and stayed sober, because you just celebrated 10 years clean this weekend.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I had 10 years yesterday.
So tell me how it's been since you've been sober, if you can even put that into words.
Wow.
10 years is a long time. It
is a long time, double digits. I get to learn I'm supposed to know what to do with my marbles now, so I don't know. Kind of scary, but I have to say, recovery has been beyond my wildest dreams. when they tell you that your wildest dreams will come true in recovery, they're not lying. Hey, bad things happen, you know, and bad things have happened to me in recovery, but I didn't use. I think that it took me a couple years to really feel even stable, you know, and everybody recovers differently. For me, it took me a while to feel stable and to feel like I was like I was a human being again, because I really had sunk to such a low point that I couldn't even function, you know, and it took me a while. I came into recovery. I got a sponsor, right? I got a sponsor. The very first sponsor I asked her, would you be my temporary sponsor? And she said, do you want temporary recovery? And I was like, no, I don't. And she's been my sponsor ever since. So it's been 10 years with the same sponsor who has loved me. I have been a sponsor. I do step work. I've gotten jobs, lost jobs. I recently got married, which I didn't think that was going to happen. I never thought it was going to happen. My parents didn't think it was going to happen. I think they were happier than I was.
Yeah, who would love me? What
Yeah,
time in your life
right.
did you go from who would love me to congratulations, you got married last
Yep.
month?
Yep. I got a bachelor's degree. I went back to school. I got my bachelor's degree. I'm working on a credential to be a CASAC. I've worked in the field. I'm not currently working in the field, but I've enjoyed working in the field, you know. I've enjoyed doing group work. I've enjoyed giving back. You know, I have learned things in the program like spiritual principles, compassion, love, honesty, trust, kindness, giving to others so freely what was given to me. And most importantly, I think for me, it's been an ego reduction program. I'm trying to learn how to shrink my ego, and that does not come easily. You know, self-centeredness for me is the core of my disease. And I would say also, you know, early on, I wanted to use. I wanted to use when I first came into recovery. I remember being at one of my first meetings, and somebody went up and got a 6-month key tag, and I looked at the person next to me and I said, I will never get 6 months clean because I can't do it. I thought there was something constitutionally incapable. I was constitutionally incapable. I was like, that works.
You were that person.
Yeah, it was me they were talking about, you know. Everybody else could get it, but not me. And to sit here and say that I have 10 years of consecutive clean time is a miracle, you know. But I also want to say, you know, I am no further away from a drink or a drug as a newcomer, you know, and someone with 24 hours can teach me something. I always want to remain teachable, and I don't ever want to forget my last drink or drug.
Jamie, tell me how, over the course of 10 years, I can't imagine a single emotion that you haven't experienced. Anger, happiness, sadness, excitement, grief. Tell me some of the times that your recovery has been tested and yet you just didn't pick up.
Okay, I could tell you a lot of those times. As I said, you know, I wound up having a child with the man who was abusive. And when I left him, I was a month pregnant, and I chose to have the child by myself. And I said, I'm going to raise her by myself. He had pushed me when I went back to him, you know, after I went back to him, and he pushed me when I was a month pregnant, and I said, you may have hurt me, but you're not going to hurt this baby, you know? And raising her alone was very challenging, you know? Very challenging. She's an energetic, spirited child. And there were times when I was at my wit's end where I'd have her by myself and I'd have to go to meetings. Sometimes I'd have to bring her. Sometimes I'd have to leave the meeting because she was acting up. Going back to school with her was really tough. There were times when it got, you know, I've struggled with depression, you know, and there were times when I was like, my God, you know, a glass of wine and a cigarette would be really good right now, you know, but I was able to think it through and think it through to the end. And I was pregnant and I lost a child. And that was really sad. And my parents lost their home in a fire. And that was a home my daughter was raised in. I lived above them. And that was traumatizing and sad. There have been times when I have really wanted to use. In fact, one time, it was a couple years ago, I wanted to use so bad. And it was the first time really in a lot of years that I wanted to use. And I called somebody up and I said, I want to use, but just leave me alone because I'm going to use, that's it. And I hung up with that person and 3 people called me back. And one of them I talked to. And she said to me, I know you well enough to know that you're not going to get up at that meeting tomorrow and you are not going to get a white key tag. Your daughter has never known you to use, and she's not going to. And I was able to really take a deep breath and not use, you know?
What would be your message to someone out there that's still sick and suffering, that's still struggling, that still thinks that they're not lovable, there's no light at the end of the tunnel, and if it is, it's an oncoming train. Somebody out there that is also thinking, wow, 10 years, say the least of, I don't think I can get 30 days. What would be your message to someone out there watching?
My message would be that if I can do it, you can do it. It is possible. And just, you know, there are meetings out there. There are meetings all the time. There's online meetings. There's a helpline there. And if you just go just go to a meeting a day and the rest takes care of itself. And that there are people out there who have been exactly where you are, and it is so worth it. And I would tell them that they were worth it. It's amazing. You know, I have a daughter who's 9, and she knows recovery so well that, you know, she said, I was watching some commercial. Oh, it was one addiction show, and the lady said, well, Steve lost his house, he lost his car, he lost his job. What else could he possibly lose? And my daughter goes, his integrity. And she was, you know, probably 2 years younger than this at the time, and she said, Mom, they're on recovery.org. Maybe you know them. Maybe you know them, Mom. I mean, she knows, like, keep coming back. She knows key tags. She knows. My daughter never has to know me using. And there's nothing that using is going to make better.
We got about a minute left, Jamie.
Okay.
And also in the course of your recovery, you, and you mentioned your family as
Yes.
well, have written a book.
Yes, we have.
Tell us a little bit about your book and how someone could get access to it in the few seconds that we have left. What it's about.
Okay.
Why would someone want to read it?
The book is about our story, mine and my family's, of going through the guilt and shame of addiction, knowing that it's not shameful anymore. We have a Facebook page, we're on Twitter, and we have a website, itwentwithoutsaying.com. And the book is really about, I think, releasing shame and knowing that you're not alone, and breaking down the walls of denial, and that recovery is possible.
Welcome to Colonie TV, the governmental educational channel for the town of Colonie.